Well, just when I think Geno Smith couldn't play any worse, he goes and does something like this and totally redeems himself. The Seattle Seahawks beat the Washington Commanders 29-26 in a nail biter in a game that was 26-26 with less than a minute left in the game. And while this was a bounce back game for Geno Smith, 31 of 47 for 369 nice yards and two touchdowns. More importantly, zero interceptions, zero turnovers after he's coming off a streak of 6 turnovers in 4 games. Needed this big time. I want to say at the very outset, though, the MVP of this game was Jason Myers, the kicker. 5 for 5 on field goals, 2 for 2 on extra points, accounted for 17 points, and many of these kicks, not really gimmies, I mean, upper 40 yards for some of them, nailing them. And when you account for the fact that Joey Slye, the Commanders kicker, missed his very first extra point, and that kind of set the tone for the rest of the game. Because when you miss that first extra point, the math of every single score after that changes. And this ended up being a 3-point game. And if on that last drive the Seahawks were down 27-26 instead of tied 26-26, there is a more relaxed aura that you can bring to that drive, and it dictates, because the Commanders scored with, I think, a minute and a half left in the game, and it dictates what they're going to do. So it plays a big role in the game. So kudos to Jason Myers. We got a great kicker, and he's justifying that contract that he got. So kudos to Jason Myers. Man, okay, where to start with this game? Geno played better, as I said in the outset. The offensive line played better. Much, much, much better in this game. Man, play after play after play, he was getting at least 3 seconds, sometimes 4, sometimes 5, but when it gets to 5, you got to eventually make a play. There was one time on third down, and you know what? Let me just back up and talk about third down in general in this game. In the first half, the Seahawks on third down, and third down has been a real issue for this team. They were converting somewhat in different ways. So on one play, Geno evaded the pocket and ran for 13 yards to get a first down. I think it was either 3rd and 7 or 3rd and 4. There was a bunch of 3rd and 4s in this game, bizarrely. And that's what I want to see more of. If you are going to take more than 3 seconds, once 3 seconds, that alarm needs to go off in your head, and you need to get out of the pocket and throw the ball, find a safe space, or run. Because, okay, I don't know that you necessarily have that in your arsenal to be like a prolific runner, but you are not terrible. You're not the worst. You're not the Stone Age ponies that Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. I mentioned them before as, of course, they're the greatest of all time, but they can't really run. But you're not that. You have a little bit of athleticism, so use that as long as you don't fumble. Because I remember you did that in that year that you split time with Russell Wilson, was it 2 or 3 years ago? So as long as you secure the ball, then feel free to run after that, after those 3 seconds. So they did an okay job on third down. Not great. There was a ton of 3rd and 4s and 3rd and 7s in the first half. They might have been like 2 for 5, but when you're, I'm not sure. Don't take that as a stat, but I think it just seemed like maybe they were like 2 for 5, or they converted 2 and they're 2 for 6 in the first half, which is better than they were last week. I think last week they were worse. maybe like 1 for 12 or 1 for 13. So what the Commanders did in the second half, very intelligently, and this is something that the Seahawks are going to have to counter for future games because Commanders laid out a blueprint for ways to overcome this. But in the second half, the switch the Commanders made is they blitzed on every third down, and they got home, and they forced. I'm looking at this Washington defense. They got one sack, but they got 5 QB hits, 4 tackles for loss. But it's more the QB hits and the sack. I would be willing to guess that most all of those QB hits came in the second half when they were blitzing on third down. That was successful for them because in the second half, the third down wasn't really there for the Seahawks. So they're going to have to do what the Huskies did, which is on third down, you got to bring more protection from your tight ends and your running backs because Washington was just getting through. So that's a point of contention there. Of course, this was a close game, and I had mentioned last week that I wanted a resounding win in this one. Did not get that. This does not really show that you are anything more than an average team, maybe a slightly above average team, because the Lions are 7-2 at this point. They're second place in the NFC, and you are one of the only teams that beat them. It's you and the Ravens. So, but what you've been showing now is you play to, I guess, mostly you play to the level of your opponent, outside the outlier that was last week. We talked about that. Go and check that reaction podcast if you haven't seen that. But overall, we saw Ken Walker get 19 carries. I usually want to see him get 20, at least 20, maybe 25. So I like that. It was, 63 yards on the carry, but he got that 64-yard touchdown reception. So total in the day was over 120 yards, 127 yards for Ken Walker. And I want to see him get the ball in space more. I think if you are able to throw some screens to him, the way you threw a lot of screens to JSN to start this game, which, by the way, I like that game plan for Waldron. Get the ball out of Geno Smith's hands quickly, and it was 1 to 2 seconds in the beginning of the game. Get it, and then just throw like a screen or just a quick outside pass to somebody, and then provide the blockers for him. DK and Lockett and Bobo just kind of blocking for JSN to start the game. Got Lockett involved. Lockett, man, what a game for Lockett. 8 catches, 92 yards, and that touchdown. Great catch. I mean, that play, that Geno to Lockett play for that touchdown, that might have been the play of the game, especially for the offense. That was really good. That's what I want to see, and that connection that Lockett and Geno have for touchdowns is exceptional. So that was great. Good to see DK more involved as well. 7 for 98. He is theoretically your number one. You gave him 12 targets. He caught 7 of those. I still think for DK there's more meat on that bone in terms of he can continue to level up even more. He's doing what his God-given capabilities allow him to do, but I think if he works on his craft more, he can be one of the greats of all time, and he's still not there yet. But solid game, 7 for 98. That's what you want to see out of your number one receiver. Zach Charbonnet, 6 carries for 44 yards. I think there was a big 4th and 1 where he converted that as well. He is a great, powerful runner, and 6 carries is sometimes more than he usually gets, so that's great. And I would have faith in him as even the number one. If you were to give him 20 carries, I would have faith in him as well. So good game by Zach Charbonnet. He's great, and in addition to be like a powerful runner that like just breaks tackles, I saw him have some fancy feet today as well, which I was pleasantly surprised by. Um, yeah, as I mentioned, JSN 4 catches, 53 yards. Those was mostly in the first quarter. That Will Disley screen, he ended up with 2 catches for 22 yards. Zach Charbonnet 4 catches, 18 yards to go with the 44. So solid day for Charbonnet. Bobo 2 catches for 13. That's really just a result of him being the fourth receiver. Of course, he could do more, but his 1 catch was good. And then the tight ends had a few dump off passes. So good game by the offense overall. I mean, listen, Washington, you have to put it in perspective. Obviously, they traded away their 2 best defensive players in Sweat and Chase Young, and man, those guys are playing well on their teams. And unfortunately, they both went to teams in the NFC. One of them to our rivals, and Chase Young going to the Niners. Sweat, I don't think we'll see him. I don't think we play the Bears this year. I'm not sure, but he's playing well for them, I think, too. But only allowing 1 sack. Offensive line, really good game. Really good game. Proud of the offensive line. The 4 tackles for loss, could be worse than that. So great game, offense. Okay, moving now to the defense. To Sam Howell, who I just found out was a quarter Korean, which is interesting. Who knew that? 29 for 44, 312 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Sam Howell is a berserker quarterback. And he is. Listen, if I was a Commanders fan, it's fun to watch Sam Howell. He is like a Ryan Fitzpatrick, but less erratic, but in the same vein. And while he did get 3 touchdowns, he did fumble. He did lose a fumble once. And kudos to who was it that forced that fumble? Tariq Woolen recovered it, but it was it Bobby Wagner that forced the fumble? I forget. No, Devon Witherspoon. Devon Witherspoon forced that fumble. And while we're talking about Devon Witherspoon, that guy had a heck of a game. I was critical of him as a first round pick, and they picked him so high, fifth or sixth. But the game he had today, 3 passes defensed. He did miss a tackle. He did miss maybe 1 or 2 tackles, but the 3 passes defensed, and to force that fumble. You're getting production out of him finally. So kudos to Devon Witherspoon. The big issue for the defense on this game was the Commanders found out what they could get away with and have success with, and that was not running the ball with your running backs, but passing the ball to your running backs. Look at this stat line here. Brian Robinson, 6 catches, 119 yards and a touchdown. 6 catches. Brian Robinson, 119 yards and a touchdown. Antonio Gibson, 5 catches, 42 yards and a touchdown. And of course, Logan Thomas, he's, it's another thing that they have trouble with here. The Seahawks defense, 5 catches for 40 yards. But, when you look at their receivers, Terry McLaurin, 4 catches, 33 yards. Curtis Samuel, 2 catches, 6 yards. Jamison Crowder and Jahan Dotson didn't catch a single ball. They were targeted 3 times. So the Seahawks defensive backs, man, I mean, you can't have a much better game than this. Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson are, they're no slouches. Curtis Samuel and Jamison Crowder maybe, but like just to hold them combined to 2 catches for 6 yards on 7 targets. Listen, man, you're not going to hear me say anything bad about the coverage in this game between Tariq Woolen and Devon Witherspoon and Trey Brown and those guys. Julian Love, he was okay, missed the tackle. Jamal Adams is a de facto linebacker now, which I like the fact that they moved him to linebacker. Um, he made some big plays. He is the culprit in this one for missed tackles. He just goes for the big hit. So some guys were bouncing off of him. He was diving a little bit. Him and Elijah Jackson, I would compare him to that in terms of Seahawks to Huskies. They kind of go for the big plays, but I'd like to see Jamal Adams more fundamentally sound. But I know his style is erratic. So um, Bobby Wagner, you'll see here again, led the team in tackles again as he usually does. But more importantly, he got that half sack. That was more so Dremont Jones' sack, but got involved there and made sure that sack happened. Got two passes defensed and got a QB hit. So Bobby Wagner, he has lost a step in terms of speed, but he was the guy that was cleaning up all the missed tackles today. And there were a good number of missed tackles on those running backs when they kept passing it to him. So kudos to Bobby Wagner. Um, I would say at least co-MVP of this game for the defense on the Seahawks is Boye Mafe. Man, what a revelation this guy has been. A sack, again, this is the seventh straight game he's had a sack. That's a Seahawks record. And not only did he have a sack, he had a tackle for loss, a pass deflection, and a QB hit. And that QB hit almost prevented one of the Commanders' touchdowns. He is, getting penetration through that, and he's finding. He's also good at finding the angles, right? So as these offensive linemen are blocking, he's able to juke them into one way, push them into, kind of the interior defensive lineman, and then come around the front and get to the quarterback. So great game for Boye Mafe. The the two long plays to Brian Robinson were unfortunately plays that confused Boye Mafe. It was, and listen, I will give more credit to Howell than I will blame to Boye Mafe, because Sam Howell is able to evade that pocket, and he needs to, by the way, because he is on track, I believe, still for to be the most sacked quarterback in a season in history, breaking Derek Carr's record, or David Carr. And he got sacked 3 times today, but more than getting sacked, he's gotten good by necessity at evading. And so he does that really well, and he finds space. And those two long passes to Brian Robinson, one of them being a touchdown, he found that space, and essentially Boye Mafe went from, because Boye Mafe was the guy that was covering Brian Robinson, or in the running backs usually. So he was covering them. He was doing a great job of covering him. But then Howell starts running towards where Brian Robinson was, in the same direction. And then Boye Mafe, because there's nobody else to tackle Howell, has to go up and try to tackle Howell to prevent him from getting a first down. So he's caught in this in-between area. And when that happened, when Boye Mafe started moving towards Howell, that was Howell's cue to dump it over Mafe. And Brian Robinson got those two long receptions and runs. So I don't know that that's really on Mafe. You got to have some backup. I mean, it's not going to be cornerbacks. It should be safeties. Maybe I'll blame that more on Jamal Adams, Julian Love, maybe a little bit on Quandre Diggs. I'm not sure if that was his side, but those were the two runs. So yeah, good day for Boye Mafe. Leonard Williams had a little bit of a mixed day. Listen, he got a sack, he got a QB hit, he got a tackle for loss, but he did miss a couple tackles. There was one that was like a sure-handed tackle. I mean, that's a big guy. I don't know that we have any bigger guys on our team than Leonard Williams. So I look forward to him getting on track more as he gets comfortable. He was a good player for a while in the beginning, and then he's had some kind of low light years. Maybe the Seahawks are the one to reignite his career. Hopefully that's the case. Dremont Jones finally made a play in this one. Got that half sack, got 2 QB hits. He's been kind of doing nothing. He's been underperforming for sure relative to what his expectations were. Frank Clark, I don't know what's really going on with him. He was supposed to be a big signing, not doing much. Derek Hall, I saw him miss a tackle, but he ended up getting 3 total tackles. Jordan Brooks, not a great day. He only got 2 solo tackles, 3 total tackles as a linebacker. I mean, Bobby Wagner kind of carried him in that department today. But yeah, I mean that's pretty much what happened today. Um, Ken Walker on that long touchdown did most of the work. It wasn't really Geno Smith. I was seeing some hate for Geno throughout the day, and I understand that a little bit. I mean, he's still not exceptional, but he is doing as much as like games like this. I'll take. This is if you can play games like this, Geno. That's perfectly fine to me. Not turning the ball over, finding your playmakers and just not making mistakes, even when the defense figures out what is your weakness, which is essentially blitzing. But Seahawks, coaching staff should remedy that with more blocking, and good job getting out of that pocket today, running for that first down on third, and I want to see a little more of that. Just secure the ball so you don't fumble, and try to evade the pocket if you can. Buy yourself more than those 3 seconds. But the offensive line was doing a good job giving you at least 3 seconds today. So good win. MVPs, like I said, on each level. Special teams, Jason Myers, big time MVP. Defense, Bobby Wagner and Boye Mafe can share that MVP. Really good to see Boye Mafe's development this year. And on offense, let's give it to Geno. Geno, the MVP of this offense, leading that, orchestrating that after a terrible game. Good to see him back on track, and it's what we're going to need as we enter this tough stretch here, which includes the 49ers twice, the Cowboys, the Eagles, the Rams. Not going to be easy. I'm pretty sure the Steelers are in there as well. I really want to beat the Steelers. So, Seahawks tied for first in the NFC West now with the Niners. Niners had a really impressive win today, crushing the Jaguars. Still have the Eagles and the Lions ahead of them in terms of the standings. But when you look at the overall NFC standings, the Seahawks look to be pretty comfortably in the playoffs, save for like a unexpected run that a team could make, and that happens occasionally. I don't know. I could maybe see the Rams or the Falcons making a run. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe the Bucks. But the NFC actually looks pretty weak compared to the AFC. I would not want to be in the AFC. If you look at that conference, I mean, the Jets are like 13th in that conference overall, and they're like 4-5 or 5-4 or whatever. They're like almost 500, and they're like almost last place in the AFC. And really, it's just the Patriots that seem to be tanking in that conference. And they seem to be doing it intentionally. And I mean, even the Patriots, man. I mean, you got Bill Belichick on a day like you can lose to him, but man, that AFC is crazy competitive. And it was great to see the Browns beat the Ravens today. Screw the Ravens. Man, Houston beating the Bengals. I mean, the Bengals, if the playoffs started today, would not be in the playoffs. They'd be they're the eighth seeded team in the AFC, and they seem to be like the best team over the past 4 weeks. Beating the Niners, beating us, beating a bunch of teams. And then you see teams like the Steelers that just somehow continue to win. I mean, I hope the Seahawks put an end to that. You see, Las Vegas barely beat the Jets, but just be thankful. The crux of the point is be thankful that the Seahawks are in the NFC because they have a much better chance of getting in the playoffs as they sit now. I think they'd be maybe the fifth or the sixth seed, but that can change if you beat the Niners. That can change if you beat the Niners. Okay, gonna wrap this up. Thank you all so much for tuning in to this reaction podcast. I want to remind you, if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe. If you're listening on a podcast platform, subscribe, follow there as well. Give us a rating. Follow us on TikTok and Twitter and Instagram. And leave comments. Interact. It's always a lot of fun. More fun when we're able to interact. So, exhale, Seahawks fans. Go Hawks. And until next time, have a fantastic day, football fans.